on, Meg, I'm going to do that as well. When will we be live? But anyway, we're live on Vimeo anyway. We've been chatting rubbish for a long time.
Yeah, we are live.
We are. That is podcast time. We are live. I want to have a little look as well. I want to see. I want to get that thing going on where I can see us live there and there because it's dead exciting. Welcome, everybody. We have got an extra special guest today. You'll be able to see she's my top right, but she might not be when you're looking, but it's our Kitty. Give us a wave, Kit. There she is.
Hello.
Yeah. And we have Ben, as always, our host with the most. And we've got Meg, who is always by our side. And we may have Lindy popping in. And we hopefully will have another special guest popping in soon. So I'll introduce her if and when she can get in. We might also have Rob jumping on. And we are looking for future sessions for some more special guests. So if any of you out there would like to chat about something in particular, or if you maybe run an organisation or you have experience with one of the topics that we tend to touch on and you'd like to come and share some stories with us, then please get in touch, let us know, drop a comment, and we will be able to get back to you and invite you in. In a similar vein, if you are a musician or if you are a member of a band and you'd like to access our live lounge, Ben is compiling a list at the moment. We've got quite a few people on there already, I believe. And we're going to look every week hopefully from next week, but we'll see how that goes, to be able to have some acts actually at the Welcome Centre where Ben is in the live lounge. So whatever topics we discuss, we're going to break that up with some live music. So if you're looking to get your new material out there, or if you have some awesome covers that you would like us to hear, get in touch, let us know, because this is a platform for us to be able to help you and you know, to get you involved. So please let us know. Today's topic that we're going to be discussing, and I posted it out on our page, so hopefully you've all been able to see it, and feel free, now we're live, to be able to comment so we can answer things in real time, is the topic of bullying and hate crime, which is the whole reason that we're actually all here in the first place, because it's the reason that I started the very first AFF show all by myself all those many years ago, 2015. And so I thought it was good to be able to just bring it back to that, and to just have a discussion between us about our thoughts around the topic, around what we think in general about bullying and where the problems lie and what might be some possible resolutions, and also our experiences with it. So that is basically the topic for today. So we'll be really interested if anybody wants to get involved and post some comments. That would be fantastic. We also have a little bit of I wouldn't say challenge, but a call to action towards the end, and a way that you guys can get involved as well to help us combat this and to be able to help us in our fight against bullying and hate crime. So the more people we can get involved with that would be, you know, your small part to play in something absolutely huge that could change and save lives. So I really would love as many shares and likes and comments as we can get on this one, and as much involvement as possible. Towards the end, we're going to tell you exactly how you can get involved. So I've got, I think what I might do is I'm just going to do a little quick intro into why it was such an important topic to me, and then I'm going to ask you guys some questions, if that's all right, just on your experience and anything that you want to throw in, and we'll just start the discussion that way. So when I was I'd already decided that I wanted to do a show, and you know the history of that anyway. Working in fashion, I had a real passion and a real drive to create something real. So originally that was the plan. I wanted to take my skills and my experience and my contacts and produce a show that took all the things that people wanted to see, you know, the beauty and the fashion and all the glitz and the glamour and the music, because that's what people, you know, that's what they want. That's what people just sit and consume constantly, isn't it? These kind of things. And I wanted to take all of that, but flip it around to make it an actually useful thing that could actually educate people, and whilst using all those really exciting and inviting mediums, actually give a message across that might be able to change some things for the better. So that was the idea behind it. So I knew I wanted to do that, and I knew beauty standards was important, and I knew diversity and inclusion were really important, and that they were the drivers behind it, to get as many people as possible involved from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, and just show how beautiful humans can be. And that was it, and that's how I started to plan. And I can remember having my laptop out, and I remember having pieces of paper, and I was writing down ideas, and I'd already had the songs in mind, and I'd already had the song that we're going to show later, the piece that we're going to do a new version of. So I'd had this song in my mind that I knew needed to be the pinnacle of the show, and it was going to be all about how people feel about themselves and about the language we use, and how the whole problem with lack of diversity and lack of inclusion. It sort of stems from people fitting into these boxes and not understanding other people and using language in a way that is really damaging and hateful. So I already had that idea. I thought, we'll use that. And it wasn't until I was planning one day and I had the telly on behind me and it was the crime channel was on. And it was the story of Sophie Lancaster was on the crime channel in the background. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks because I was thinking, well, we need to do this. We can't just do this show for the sake of doing a show because, again, it still seems very ego-y and very just for the sake of it. I wanted to tie it into something that was really important and do it for something towards a charitable organisation, but I couldn't for the life of me think of what to do. And that was it, literally. As soon as I saw Sophie's story, I thought that is what we need to do. I need to get in touch with the foundation and see if we can raise awareness of Sophie's story and raise some money for the foundation. So the first few shows were specifically to do that. And then obviously things changed over the years and we became more about lots of different things, including Sophie. So I always talk about Sophie's story at a certain part. And then we've got lots of other different things because it's developed and it's moved into some different areas in the years since. But and you've heard me speak before on the stage about the whole story and how, the boys that committed the crime. And I'm not going to go into the story because I'd like people to do some research. If you want to find out about Sophie's story, Google and find out and look at the Sophie Lancaster Foundation and there's some films that have been brought out about the whole story. So just do a bit of research and have a look and see what you make of the story if you're not already aware. Sophie lost her life to hate crime, and the extent of the violence is just so shocking that humans can inflict such horrific pain on another human being simply because you don't really like the way they look. And I've said it so many times on stage, those young men were not born with that kind of intolerance and hatred. It's taught by society, by siblings, friends, parents, just society in general, what you see on TV, what you read in the papers. So it's been a really, really big passion of mine to try and make sure that these things never ever happen again. And as we know, unfortunately, they just keep on happening. It's you just keep reading stories and seeing things in the media. So I think we're making great strides and things are changing and people are talking, but it's still happening. So that's for us is always be a big part of what we do, is trying to prevent that and trying to educate people. So I guess my first question, here's Laura, well, it's not Laura Marvel, it's some table I think we've got. Are you there, Laura? I know you must be there because I can see your name. Is that a computer, do you think? Is that a computer and a bit of table?
I think the laptop looks like those, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like a bit. So while Laura gets on and comes in and says hi, I'm going to just maybe start off with the first question that I've got, just to see what you guys make of it. So the first question I have, and again, out there in Facebook land and anybody on Vimeo that's watching, please get involved and leave some comments because I'm really interested in everybody's opinion on this. Where do you think the problem of bullying and hate crime comes from? Where do you think where's the root of the problem? And I'm going to go to Kitty first, actually, because we have these conversations and
throw me in the deep end for the first time.
I'm just going to throw you right in the deep end. Well, because you are sort of our founding member and our leader for the Black Dog Project, and a lot of the stuff that we cover and a lot of topics and things that come from, a lot of it is around these areas of people either experiencing bullying and hate crime in some way or other, which leads to a lot of problems, or feeling it themselves. Maybe they haven't been a target of it, but they just have that instinctive feeling that they're unworthy. And that kind of, for me, comes from the same thing, society's views on things. So have you got anything to share on that, or any thoughts on it?
Oh yeah, I think there's so many different elements. It's like a cake, isn't there? There's so many different layers. It can come from home lives. It can come from what people perceive as being just okay. They don't see it as being offensive because it's been so ingrained and it's just something that's been around them forever. They don't see a problem with certain words or how it may affect somebody else. Not just that, it's lack of things to do. Everything's online now. I feel really sorry for this generation because you can't shut off from it. If you're having a bad time or you get called names or you're being bullied, like back in the day, we'd just go home and that was it. You might think about it, but you can cheer yourself up. Now you've got your phone, it can come from everywhere. There's lack of community stuff to do outside. There's a general lack of understanding in general, really, I think. But times are changing. 100% believe times are changing, and things that used to wash just aren't washing anymore, and people are speaking up. And we're there to support them in doing so.
I agree with you there. More conversations are happening, aren't they? More people are sort of becoming less afraid to actually speak about it, and to actually, whether it's victims of bullying and hate crime actually coming forward and saying this isn't good enough, this is not right, or people that are witnessing and watching things and hearing things. I suppose social media, the flip side of that, social media can be useful in that respect, because you can look on Twitter and you can see lots of people defending other people and speaking out about how unacceptable it is. So it's two sides to the coin, isn't it? But I definitely think you're right. I think things are changing, but I think we've got a way to go. Cultural changes, isn't it? And it's from every member of society, and age isn't really it's not any particular generation. I think there's just issues everywhere across all generations. So we collectively have that responsibility, don't we, to try and do what we can as individuals and as groups to stop it, because it's such a huge problem. Laura, just to give you a chance to catch up and think of something to add in there. To Laura, by the way, those of you who don't know Laura, where have you been? Laura, you'll have seen a great stage of 5,000 times every show we've done, and we're going to do some fantastic collaborative work together. So we've got some ideas on the go that we're going to be working on, which is very exciting. So you have to keep your eye out on that one. But Laura's come on to join us today because obviously Laura was with us at the very beginning as well, and knows the story behind the work that we've done with anti-bullying, anti-hate crime, and has her own experiences and has family members who've had their own experiences as well. So I'm really grateful to you as well for being here to share some stuff with us. So the question I just asked is, and I'm going to throw it over to Meg next, just to give you a chance to have a think, is where do you think the problem comes from? What's the root when it comes to bullying and hate crime? Where do we think that it stems from? What's the root cause of what we see? Meg, have you got any thoughts while Laura's having a think?
I thought maybe like society in different groups. It's just maybe in some groups it's the norm to bully, and they just learn the wrong way, maybe.
Yeah, so education, and you know what I'm like for education. For me, that's massive. People don't know any better, and sometimes there's the excuse of ignorance, isn't there? And some people genuinely, they don't understand the use of language. I see this in schools all the time when people say something really offensive to a young person, and you pull them up on it, and they have no idea what they said. They're just repeating it. It's just regurgitating, and that's just what they've learned.
Behaviour, isn't it, as such?
Totally, I think it's totally. It can't be anything else. It's not an instinctive trait of a human being to inflict pain on another human being. It's not, that's not what we're built for. So it has to be learned. And it just makes you wonder why have we evolved that way? Why is it turned into sort of all this toxic language that's used? Ben, anything you want to add to that? I know. I've got there's a couple of things I'll throw in, but Ben, any thoughts on that?
I think it stems a lot of bullying stems from schools, personally. Because school life, it's all about, oh, that kid at the back's thick, or this kid, oh, look at your hair, your uniform's awful. And I don't think school bullies actually realise how bad it is for the person getting bullied. I don't honestly, I don't think they know the impact they're having on that person's life. And I think if they did, they wouldn't. Like I think to stop bullying, they need to nip it in the bud. So go on.
There's an element of fear there from the bully as well sometimes. I think people are not quick enough to sort of delve in and think, hang on, well, why are they reacting in that way? What makes them want to lash out or project those feelings onto someone else? What are they getting from that? Do they not have their own social network? Are they trying to, conceal something, hide something, get up the social ladder a bit? Like there's something there that needs to be addressed that's nothing to do with the individual they're actually bullying.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one. I think you're right as well, Ben. School for sure. It's where it seems to it's where it breeds, isn't it? It's where it's kind of all cultivated from an early age. If it's not stamped out there, and if it's accepted, and if someone gains dominion and power over somebody else through that, then that's just learned. That's how you protect yourself in society, and that's just your behaviour. And I'm like, mindset mojo. So brain conditioning. I'm really, really hot on that topic at the moment. Laura, anything you want to add in there?
Competition as well. When you're setting a group, whether that be a school, like a classroom, or a workplace, or like an outside hobby group, you're in a group setting, and therefore there's this human instinct of competition. Who's got one up on the other, and unfortunately for a lot of people, the easiest way to prove themselves is to put other people down, because in their mind it puts them above. So although they may not think that is a form of bullying, obviously if you critique somebody for being lesser than you in that setting, in that group, even if it's just a group of 2 or if it's a group of 100, that instantly becomes a form of bullying, doesn't it? So yeah, I think maybe like a sense of competition as well.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
you've already covered it as well, but like the whole ignorance behind it, like the ignorance is a thing that I've been talking about a lot recently with a lot of people, because there's two forms. There's one that comes from hatred and like an intent to hurt somebody, and then there's one that comes from sheer ignorance, lack of education, lack of understanding. Yeah, and like an intent to hurt somebody. Ooh. And then there's one that comes from sheer ignorance, lack of education.
Oh, we can hear you twice.
I think
It was that
headphones.
important. It was that important we had to hear it twice, Laura. That's what it was. Ben, are you on that? Can you make sure we've not got too much echo?
I
live?
have no idea where that's coming from.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Can't hear it now.
I don't have headphones, and that might be something.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think it is. It says headphones. It's all right.
I have
you
headphones, but I can't do anything with them.
We can look at them. Look, they're very pretty.
Yeah.
They're beautiful headphones. And they match your outfit as well. Stunning.
There we go.
But yeah, I think you're right. You totally hit the nail on the head there as well. And I think the whole survival of the fittest, if you're not, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, if I will be the victim, I need to make sure I'm not the victim. And the only way to do that is to make sure someone else is the victim, and then I'm safe. You know, it's sometimes as simple as that. And again, and I know I've just seen a comment pop up, and I think our Leslie's online now, is fear. Fear for me is the root of everything. Fear is huge, absolutely huge. You know, you have a biochemical response in your body when you experience any kind of fear, and that goes back to tribal communities. Anyone and different, you know. So if you think in terms of different, am I echoing now? You can hear me. In terms of in terms of difference, if you know you had that instinctive human trait to recognize difference as being a bad thing, and you know in order to survive you had to be aware of that, and that's just not the way things are anymore. But we seem to have not quite evolved out of that fear stance. So I think a lot of it is, you know, there's some inbuilt stuff there that we need to work on in terms of our actual physical responses to things. If we feel fear, then we react in very bizarre ways sometimes, and sometimes that can be that we react against other human beings in despicable, awful, horrific ways. So it's worth understanding that's part of it. Ben's frowning now, so you don't know what that noise was either, do you? Go on, Laura.
I think it was me.
I
was trying to get the comments up. Sorry, guys.
Okay, sorry. Go on, Laura. What are you going to say?
I was just asking, has anybody here read *Sapiens*, the book?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just remind me. I love that book. And something you just said then referred to. I'm still at the beginning of the book, but it's talking about like the idea of when, for example, Neanderthals met Homo sapiens, and this instant like, oh, you're different, let's attack. You know, I think, like you say, it's something in human DNA to question difference and to fight it.
But again, for education again, and when you get to the point where you understand that that's what's happening, and that's what I want to do. That's the whole point of this, is for people not to. We are human and we have responses, and we sometimes are ignorant and we sometimes make mistakes. But I think if we can wake people up to realise that their way of behaving doesn't have to be. It's not necessarily. Beliefs are interesting things, you know.
I think we've just lost you, Jane. If you can still hear us.
You haven't. It froze and then accidentally muted me without me touching anything. So it's fine. I'm back. So yeah, I'm back. So yeah, you have sort of generational inbuilt beliefs that are really hard to change. And Kitty, you'll know this. We're working on this. Core beliefs. You know, it's not something that you can just say, snap out of it, you're wrong, because there's a whole load of other things that happen when you challenge someone's beliefs. But someone's been, you know, through generations of family life where certain things, whether it's about race or religion or cultural differences, or, you know, you live in that street and I live in this street, that it's inbuilt stuff that's very difficult to sort out. But if people start to actually just challenge that a little bit in terms of it doesn't need to be this way, I'm sure there's a better way and there's a nicer way to live. And I'm just going to educate myself and understand why I feel this way. And you know, there's lots of reprogramming that can be done within society, I think, that will stop that fear of difference and that automatic response to hate just because you can't resonate and can't understand somebody else's, you know, way of life or appearance or whatever else it may be. But I think it runs a lot deeper than just talking about it and saying, well, just stop it. just stop being a big bully and just stop saying mean things, because it's deeper than that, isn't it?
There's a pack mentality as well. I think this, like I said again, with the fear, there's a fear of, if I don't join in and ridicule this person, then that person will then, I'll become that person, and that'll be me then.
Yeah.
So do I jump in and make somebody else the butt of the joke, or do I become that person and risk, So it's,
And
you'll find that people that
you know-
really don't want to join in, if anything, they'll start suffering from things like depression themselves, because they know it's not right, but they don't feel like they're able to step up. So it really does create some tension, because then it creates belief that even their own friends aren't actually their friends. So who is their friends? It's a horrible position to be in.
I was just going to agree with you on that one, because some of the work that I've been doing in schools has thrown up that, which wasn't really something I was aware of for a while, but it became really obvious that there is, and I think there's I should have pulled up the statistics, there's some statistics about bullying, whereas the percentage of bullying victims that are in a school, but the ridiculously high percentage of non-victims, observers, not participants.
Yeah.
I don't know what the terminology is, but basically people who are in that circle but have to endure watching this because they're too afraid to jump in and become that victim. They don't want to be part of it, and the mental health issues that stem from that, which lead right into adulthood, the guilt and the fear and the shame of not helping somebody, not being a better person, and feeling like that they should have done something more. So, like you said before, I don't know who made the point. I think it was Ben actually, that people do not realise the damage. And this isn't just, I'm not talking just about children bullying other children in school. That's an issue, and that's what we focus on. I'm talking about, adults. I'm talking about teachers bullying children. I'm talking about, adults bullying other adults. I'm talking about all different generations and different people really not having a good grasp on how to be empathic and compassionate and use the right kind of language. And a lot of work that we're doing in Mindset Mojo at the moment, and it fascinated me when I started on this journey of researching and writing, the amount of people who are, adults and don't seem to have, there's nothing on the surface, they're not come for any particular reason, they're not looking to be fixed in any way, but all of a sudden through the process something will come out that from an early age a teacher or an adult has said something to them, a throwaway comment that person will never have thought of again, and then patterned in something in that brain to suggest that you're unworthy, you're inadequate, you're not good enough, you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, you're too slow, you're not sporty, you're not creative, something. And that impact then is a belief in that person that stays with them for the rest of their life. And how much of a responsibility is that for every single human being to understand that what the impact their words have on other humans? It's massive, isn't it? Massive. You don't know the impact you're going to have, whatever you say. I just think it's a huge responsibility that we all need to kind of educate ourselves about. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Right, I have another question, and they're sort of similar. What do you think the biggest problem that we need to tackle is? I know it's similar, but rather than being where's it come from, is there a starting point, and is there something that we can do, and where do we go to start trying to fix what's broken? Is there a way to do it? What would we do as the Sophie Lancaster Foundation to stamp out bullying and hate crime? What do we think? Who will I come to first? Ben?
I think stamping out the passing comments. I think that's a great place to start, because like the simple things like, oh, you look awful today, your hair's a mess, or just things like that. It's not needed, and it's where worse things start to become reality. And if you
really
stop
good.
it, if you stop it there, then I think it will get better. Even like I think violent hate crime and among other things are going to stop if you stop it from an early age and you stop them with the passing comments.
So it doesn't escalate. Yeah, you're right. I've seen it in so many playgrounds as well, and there's so many kids with my own kids as well, and it just, oh my God, it's like little knives. I think, oh my goodness, you have no idea the power of this. Some of the things that I'll say, oh, you idiot, oh, you're so stupid, oh, you're this, oh, you gay lord, oh, just so many bad words used that the kids don't even realise they don't. And then when you pull children up a lot of the time, they go, oh, it's just silly, everyone says it. Like, they can't fathom how that would be hurtful to anyone, because that's just words, it's what we say. And that worries me that young people are so used to the kind of language that would upset other people. And people say it to me, so it's all right. I think the earliest possible. Well, I suppose that brings it to early years then, doesn't it? It's part of education with early years around use of language and how hurtful things can be. So I agree. Kitty, anything on that?
I think there's two things really for me. I think time is one huge factor. I think the way things are moving now, our younger generation are wise. They're wising up, they're wiser than us, they're wiser than the generations before us, and it's going to take time for that to catch up, so then they become the parents, and it isn't the parents passing down these old views that are outdated. It will be the new woke generation that are passing around these ideas of equality, diversity, change, standing up for what's right, speaking out, freedom of speech. But secondly, I think just going to the phrase of, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Positivity, like, you can stamp out bullying by, it's hard. I'm not saying it easy, but you can just being kind to a bully, or just saying okay, or kill them with kindness, because eventually they'll have nothing to say to that. But at the same time, I've lost my train of thought and I'm rambling. But no, I just feel like if you flip it and try and make things positive and you eradicate some of the negativity, then
yeah. It's a good point. A really, really, really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but you are right.
That quote,
it's time, isn't it?
That quote, don't say anything at all if you haven't got anything nice to say. That is something everyone needs to follow.
Yeah, it hits it on the head, isn't it? Like you said, Ben, it's just unnecessary. There's absolutely no reason at all to make these throwaway comments or to say anything nasty about anyone ever. No matter what you're going through, those people are reacting, aren't they, and lashing out because of what's going on for them, and they just want someone else to experience that hurt, so I'm just going to throw it at you.
We all have those thoughts. I think sometimes you just need to take back a step back and sort of think, hang on a minute, just that one simple comment to somebody that's potentially had a really bad day or something bad's happened or they're already struggling could be the difference between tipping someone over the edge. Or do you know what I mean? Nobody wants that responsibility on their hands. I think everybody needs to own their words and really think about what impact that's going to have on someone. Now more than ever, I think it's detrimental.
I think maybe you're right there in that, and as well, people just actually knowing this. If more people knew that a little sentence or a word will have an impact, like we have when we do our hater piece that we're going to show you shortly in the t-shirts, that 30 years later, that word that you said once in a playground when we were 6 still bothers me. If people knew that in advance, we can educate that. I'm sure a lot of people, where there's no malice involved, intentional, a lot of people would think, my goodness, that's not something that I thought would stay past the 2 minutes it took me, or 2 seconds to say it, because I forgot about it, but the other person didn't. So maybe it is education and time. I've not thought about that before, but I think you're right. We're just waiting for this generation to kind of start to educate their own children. And what about, so I've got another quick question that leads on from that, but Laura, have you got anything you want to add?
I also think, as much as I'm about positivity too, I also sort of come back and forth with the sense of like, we can't be too excusable. Like, a lot of people will say something incredibly problematic, and then we'll be like, oh, well, they didn't have this education, or they live in this area, so they don't understand, or they come from this generation, so it's different for them. There's a lot of excuses given, which actually we need to call people out for it. For just as an example, like somebody would say something, like, just an example, incredibly sexist, and before I have the chance to sort of say, hold on, let's say it's a man who said something sexist to me, another man will call out his friend, his male friend, he'll call him out and say, yo, mate, that's not okay. Like, don't go there. That's out of order. That's out of line. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to stand up for me, but he did in that moment. He chose to just call him out on it and say, I don't care what your background is. Or like that. That's not okay. And you should know, just as a basic human instinct, the difference between right and wrong, what's going to hurt somebody and what's not. My other point, sorry, just quickly, was, as well as obviously education is massively important, knowledge is power, I totally agree. I think it's about the type of education as well. Like, I think the idea of going into a school and saying, hey kids, like, be nice to each other, it just doesn't work. It has to be relatable. It has to be something that they can be like, oh, that makes sense now, because it's coming from somebody they can relate to, not somebody who's just like, cheesy and it's washed over. It has to be real. It has to come from a raw, gritty, real place, and that's what we'll get to kids. An emotional response.
I think kids need to be told how to stand up for themselves. I think not just like don't do bullying and stuff. I think if a kid can stand up for himself and tell another kid, no, that's not right, don't do that to me, I think it's
boundaries again, what they're talking about. I think it's just spot on there.
Just kids don't know how to interact in that way, and it usually results in a fight, where if they can verbally actually speak to a person and say, no, please don't say that to me, I think it'd solve some issues. It wouldn't solve them
I
all, but
wonder whether
it'd
that's
definitely
something
help.
we can do. I wonder whether that's something we can do
It's
because we've not touched on it really, have we, Meg? Go on.
it's just about to say, it's like building individual. Go on,
It's a
kid.
delay, sorry.
Go on. Go on, Meg.
I was going to say, it's just about building individuals with resilience, isn't it? If they've got the tools to be like, as Ben just said, to stand up for themselves and be like, you know what, no, I'm worth more than that. You're not allowed to talk to me like that without being violent. I think it'll go a long way. And I think lockdown has helped just in general society to be a bit nicer to each other.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah,
to
people
be
are starting
real, though.
to.
It can't be simple phrasing. You can't just say to a kid, these are the key points that you need to say. It has to be real. It has
No,
to be
exactly.
something that the child who happens to be a bully will actually hear and actually listen to rather than just laugh. You know, because a kid can easily go, no, stop. And the kid will just get laughed at if that's what they say.
Yeah.
So it has to be something that will actually work. It's almost like tactics.
Yeah.
It's tactical, yeah. There's a really good YouTube I have to show you, actually. I'll post it. It's a YouTube. There's a guy, I think he's in America, and I was studying him when I was trying to build my stuff for year sevens. I was asked to go in and do a whole year group of year sevens, so 200 kids, one session a week for 6 weeks. And I didn't actually get to do this, actually, but I wanted to, but I needed a second person to do it with. It's more of a sort of role play exercise. And it was really good about barriers and about boundaries and about how to tackle bullies without violence. And he was really, really clever with what he did. And he had everyone role play, and he had someone be the bully and bully him. And then in the first instance, he sort of reacted, his body language, and he sort of shut down, and he was crying, and he was upset, and he was like, you don't say that. And then he reacted with violence, and then he, to show that that's what normally happens. And then he got the woman to come in at him again. It was an adult. He got the woman to come at him again, saying, "Oh, you look stupid," or "You're ugly," and all the insults that she could find. And he was just totally comfortable in his own skin. His body language had changed, and he was sort of saying things back to her, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry you feel like that. You're brilliant. You look great. You look great. Is everything okay? You must be having a really bad day." And he was just dead, really sort of strong in himself. And she couldn't think of anything. Totally floored her. I know I'm being a bit flippant. It's not that easy, but just the way he'd come across with some of the things that he did to counteract her, the things that she was saying. If you feel like that, that's fine. I totally respect your opinion. I'm quite happy with me there, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, it must be lucky for you. You're really clever. And I think she called him dumb or stupid, and it just threw her off. So I suppose there's little things like that in a school environment with role playing exercises and trying to get kids to discover themselves, different ways to deal with things. It might be something we can touch on there and do, and it is. I think you're right there. Teaching resilience. Go on, Kitty.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of restorative justice?
Yeah.
So that was something that started originally, I believe, in prisons, and it was when two inmates had a fight, they would wait a little period of time and then sit them down together, and one would say to the other, "This happened and it made me feel like this," and then the other person will say, "That happened and for me it felt like this," and then they talk it out and then discuss how, if it was to come to a point again when something similar would happen, how would they both want it to pan out so it wouldn't ever resort to violence or bad feelings. I think we've used it quite a lot, that model in a psychiatric unit, because obviously these people are living together potentially for years and years and years in the same wards and things like that. So you're going to have butt heads. You're living with people that you can't get away from, and sometimes they have bad days too. Sometimes you're having bad days, so there's a lot of conflict. But I think that would be an ideal model to take and put into schools and really get it out there, that take kids away from other kids and just have two individuals involved and say like how that made them feel, why it made them feel like that, and just really, like Ben was saying, just get them to talk it out, talk about how it makes them feel, because then you won't have that excuse of lack of understanding. You won't have any of those other like excuses, like Laura was saying. It just becomes normal practice, and then it got to the point where it's not a punishment, but it was used as a system where you wouldn't be able to have your grounds book or leave unless things were resolved, and it was like a rehabilitation to get you working well in society. So if you were out, you wouldn't have the sort of behavioural issues that come with just starting fights and not resolving them for no problem. It would be, this is the consequence if that happens, because somebody else, we might go to prison, or we might have other sentences or orders. So yeah, and I think that would work really well in schools.
So why do you think they don't do that in schools? There's the question.
I don't think they're not. I don't know whether they're actually someone's put it in there.
I suggested it to a school. I suggested restorative justice, and there's a police officer, an ex-police officer that I know really well, and she did the same thing, trying to get restorative justice to be the model. school were a little bit resistant, which is I thought was odd, but it was something that I've got on my list of things that I'm putting together. It's certain plans that I think there was a school in England that we gave over like a schematic layout of the school so that the kids would all put little hotspots on there themselves. Where do you see, bullying hotspots, and where do you see safe spaces, and get the kids to develop the anti-bullying policy themselves and work on it, as a team. And restorative justice was all part of that. Putting things in place so the kids would work on focus groups and mental health champions, and if something goes wrong, you can sort of support each other. So yeah, it makes me wonder why for me that's kind of common sense approach. I think it's common sense.
I feel like potentially maybe there's that buffer of the thing that we've come across before, where people don't necessarily feel qualified to be able to sit people down in that session. There's maybe there's one thing bringing it up and raising it and putting it in a forum, but having the teacher then have to sit down with two pupils and try and act professionally, it's not down to them. It needs to be someone external that can sit down and say
100%.
this, and that can't happen in schools. Otherwise, you ruin that therapeutic relationship with your own. Is there favouritism?
Yeah, and there's no way teachers have any time to do that. Every time there's a bullying incident, the teachers could not possibly factor that in, but there must be a way.
But then if you think about it,
it's been done.
They have detentions. They've got time for giving a kid an after school detention. So if they've got time to stay after school in their own time to give a detention to a kid, then why can't they have 10 minutes of talking to two students?
Yeah,
why can't you have time for rather than the punishment?
I wouldn't say so
and it's
much
high school, isn't it?
Problem. It's what teachers are told to do. There's always an authority.
Yeah.
Do that,
It's the system stuck in the wrong ways.
And teachers have the worst mental health out of everybody because of the sheer pressure that they're under. So for me, it's protecting teachers and teaching staff as well, and finding a way that the systemic change from above, and this is how we deal with things, and this is how the policies and the procedures need to be, because the overwhelming evidence that restorative justice works, and it protects a lot from all of the other mental health issues and the issues and the drains on society from violent crime and the prison service and everything else. That kind of thing is what should be underpinning our education system, rather than the old school post-war and Victorian principles that we operate from. It just, like you say, Kitty, it takes time, doesn't it? And people are banging on doors for this, but to get that policy change and then all the changes that have to come with it, it's just not fast enough. But it's so important, isn't it, for everybody's benefit? But maybe it's something we can do as an alternative education provider, and we could look at that, couldn't we? Sorry, Laura, go on.
No, sorry. I think there's a delay, so I'm sorry. One thing that must be quite difficult for a teacher, I imagine, is that they're seeing their students every day, and they see their students as individual characters and backgrounds, and they know so much about them. And although they see their students as that, the powers above them who tell them how to teach, basically, don't see that at all. They don't see individual kids. They just see a load of statistics and numbers and, how many kids in that class. That's all they're seeing. I'm not saying they don't care, but to some extent, there's a level of,
It's definitely from the high up level. It's numbers, and it's business, it's numbers. But yeah, I know some absolutely amazing teachers who, as their own practice, restorative justice for them is that's the way they would operate. They'd sit and talk to kids, and their classroom environments, from what I can see, are a lot different. And so it's just interesting, isn't it, the conversation around what works and what doesn't work. And in my experience, that kind of coming at it from that angle has massive benefits, but you do have to have the time, the patience, the training, your own resilience when you're dealing with, it's so much easier to get the shouty head on and put some sanctions in place, but then that long-term change doesn't happen. People just react even more. Then force creates resistance, doesn't it? It's physics. So as soon as you force someone to do something, the resistance is always there. But trying to actually, like you say, restore restorative justice creates change, doesn't it? It creates different behaviour in the future, and people realise the impact of their actions. And I know loads of teachers that are doing amazing work with that. It'd be nice to see across the board, wouldn't it? Kitty?
I think as well, it's just about someone taking the plunge, and it's the same for adults in workplace settings. It's someone who has to be willing to stick the neck on the line and say, we're allocating this budget for this because you'll see a result from this. I can guarantee you'll see a result, and when the result's there, it'll be a permanent result, and then we'll carry on, and it will fund itself because you'll have less burnout, you'll have less bullying, you'll have less absences from school, you'll have less teacher burnout. It will have a ripple effect for everything in everybody's lives. Parents at home life not having to deal with children upset not having to then go to their work and worry about children. It affects everything, and then someone just needs to be able to say, this is what we're going to do, here's the budget, we're going to take a risk, let's go. But unfortunately, until we find that person, we just got to keep badgering people and making it
it's true. It is. Just trying to protect everybody, isn't it? And try to protect everybody and the future as well. But sometimes it's difficult to start those changes. Just that little starting point is really hard. I know that we're pushing on for time now. We need to get onto our Vibe Tribe Zooms shortly, which is very exciting. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. Just kind of one little question. I won't go around everybody, just if anybody wants to chip anything in for a couple of minutes about social media and how social media has an impact on bullying. What do we think compared to, because I'm old, when I was a kid, no social media. There's always been bullying, always. But, the statistics and what we hear and what we see, it seems to be that it's a bigger problem because it's 24 hours a day and there's no escape anymore. Whereas you could just go home from school and at least you'd be left alone for a few hours. Any thoughts from anyone on that?
Oh, go on, Laura.
I think one of the things about social media that I hadn't really thought of before until you just said it now was that when it comes to being, experiencing bullying from somebody that to some level you're aware of, who they are as a person, you can almost try and work out why it's happening and work out what's going on in their lives and everything. But when it comes to social media, online bullying, usually you're a victim of bullying from absolute strangers who don't know you at all. So for some people, they can brush that off and think, oh, they don't know me, it's fine. But then for other people, they'll hear the idea of strangers calling them this, that, and the other, and it's like, okay, the people in my real life are calling me this, and then strangers are too, then it must be true because it's being validated everywhere instead of just from home or from school or from where. It's suddenly a sense of like, oh, it must be true because it's coming. It's it's global almost. So I think that's one of the problems. Coming from strangers gives it a weird sense of validation, even though it shouldn't. Even though it should be the opposite. Which is a problem. I mean, it's responsible for a hell of a lot. I think there should be many more barriers in place of what can and can't be posted and commented and everything with regards to Facebook and YouTube and that. I think for some of the things that I've seen content being blocked, I'm like, why on earth is that being blocked? And then for some of the things that I do see, let's be real, some of the comments that I read on certain people's posts, I'm thinking, gosh, if that person has any suicidal tendencies whatsoever, who knows what could just be a final trigger there? Like, that's terrifying. And that stuff isn't blocked. And I'm like, well, who's in charge here? Who decides this? It's bizarre.
It is, spot on there. Kitty, were you going to add anything to that one?
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking, like, I had my own personal experience with this weekend. It's really, really hard to manage. As a career, I put myself out there, and my whole business is run through social media. It's how I network. So I feel like very much there's this attitude that because I've put myself out there, I should expect everybody to be able to chime in and talk about how my pictures look, or talk about what my posts say, or feel like I need to respond if I'm online at 3 a.m. Like, there's a lot of different attitudes to social media where you can't run away from it, but at the same time, sometimes you just want to be able to use it to look at positive fluffy cat videos or speak to your family, but it just leaves you so open for ridicule from every angle. And I just look at it now, and it's just the whole life is online. Like, I remember just going to knock on someone's door to find out if they're in. I don't know. I just think it's terrifying. Like you said, there are positives.
Is that a case of
sorry, the politics. I was going to say positives for LGBT. I can't get the words out. Sorry. There's been positives for the LGBTQ plus community, is what I was trying to say. Because people will be able to do the research, looking at coming out videos, look at how people have been supported, look at advice about how to come out. There's been the Black Lives Movement, which has been amazing, and people have been able to speak up there and see support. So there is a platform to see support as well as the negativity. I think it's just about having that self-management, about knowing where to look and protect yourself, and know when to step away and say, oh, I need to deactivate today, it's not for me. But it's a
double-edged sword, isn't it? it's a double-edged sword because you've got the positive, the communities that can come together. You'd never get support before unless people are physically with you, but now you can access support and research and education. But at the same time, it is the double-edged sword that you're always going to have to. So I suppose it is again about individual resilience, isn't it? Building people's resilience, working out what their boundaries and barriers are, and helping people to put those things in place and to find the right places for support rather than accessing things that could be a bit toxic for them. So, Meg, just before we move on to our final bit, was there something that you wanted to add to that one?
I was going to say, now I've forgotten. Just move on. No, don't worry at all.
I'll come back to it. Okay, yeah. So what I was going to do now, we've got just under 15 minutes left before we have to hop onto Zoom and plan some cool stuff out. So I want to invite anybody that is watching, and I realise that we get loads of watchers after, so it's going to be useless if you watch this after. We're jumping onto Zoom. The links will be on our Facebook page anyway. We are looking at planning a music video to basically it's a rework of our famous hater piece that we do on stage. And those of you that followed us from the beginning, you'll know exactly what this is. It's our most important piece about bullying and hate crime, and it's a very emotional piece. And it's it's our best weapon that we have to combat and tackle bullying and hate crime. And I use it in schools, and we use it every time we do a show. We talk about it a lot. We send it off to other organisations to help them. So it's hugely powerful. And we really, really would like to have as many people involved as we possibly can. We've done it with, small numbers of people before now, and it's had a huge impact. So imagine how much impact it can have with many, many, many people getting involved. And the beauty of lockdown that we found is now we've been able to take everything digitally, which ironically, we already had that at our disposal, but we never used it. Now we've had to. We've realised the world's open to us now. I've got friends over in America that I'd like to invite, and I'm going to try and get anyone that we've got from overseas to get involved. This isn't just a thing for the United Kingdom, it's global. So we're going to produce a music video where we're going to rework the piece that we do live, and we want everybody to get involved and give us a word that you have experienced in your life that has had a negative impact on you. And it can be any word that you choose, something that's important to you. We usually have them on T-shirts in the show, and everybody walks out wearing their chosen word on their T-shirt. And it's set to a piece of music that we're going to do the same thing to. We're going to get everybody to come on Zoom next Thursday night. So next Thursday at 7 o'clock, we've set up a Facebook event and we're sharing it, so you can let us know if you can make it. And all you'd need to do is basically have a pen handy. So we're going to ask everybody to come on board, and when we get on our Zoom, we'll have a big chat and we'll talk about some stuff. And then we're going to get everybody to share their word either on a piece of paper, or you can write it on your hand, or if you're out and about, you can find a stone or a brick or a leaf or whatever you want, a mirror would be cool. Lots of different backgrounds. It'd be great if we can get some different environments, so you don't all have to be at home in your bedrooms or in your offices with a blank wall behind you. It would be nice, as when we were having our meeting before, if we had someone on a construction site, or somebody in a park, or somebody out in the woods, as long as you're safe and you maintain your social distance and not doing anything daft. Different environments would be good, because we can show in the video then all different people from all different walks of life, all experiencing the same thing, and that we can use that as part of this education that's so desperately needed, and we can use it wisely, and we can make a real difference, and you'll be part of that. And you need to have a mobile phone and a pen, so there's no great dramas with that. So everybody that wants to join in, please follow the link that we'll post on the page. And we're going to start off with ours, because my last question to you guys was going to be, have you ever experienced it yourself? Have you, do you have a word? Have you experienced this in your life, either as a child or as an adult? And I thought that would be sort of a nice way to end. We've got just over 10 minutes left. So I know that's not going to give us time to go into great detail. And I don't know whether anybody wants to go into great detail. It's not something that you have to talk about or share. Sometimes we've had people that have really wanted to tell their stories. Sometimes people are happy to have a word on a T-shirt, but don't want to go there. So I'm going to really quickly show you my word. And I'm assuming, Ben, you can do some magic trickery. We'll put them all together in a minute, but I'm just going to show you mine. Oops, if you can see it. Let me get up close. There you go. My hand looks gigantic now. That's my word. And just a 1 second explanation of that for you is that I was sat across 2 different camps when I was at school. So it was really bizarre, because I didn't really fit in either. And I was goth for a while, very punky, very gothy. That was my chosen style. But I was also really good at school, and I got on really well with all different groups of people. So I can remember being ridiculed. The group that I used to hang around with that was really into their punk and into their metal and their sort of goth scene used to call me a swat in jest, because I would also hang around with the swats that did really good work and that wasn't quite fitting with their dynamic. but then I can remember being called a freak and a weirdo by the other side because of the music I listened to and the clothes that I wore. So although I'm really lucky, and I'll be honest, at this point, I didn't experience a great deal of bullying. I didn't start this whole thing off because of my story. I just really felt for anybody out there that was going through it. So it never really bothered me too much. But when I was asked to pick a word, 2 words stood out to me straight away without thinking about it. So I know those words have been programmed in that have made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So back then, you know, that was my experience, was just getting words from all different groups that I didn't quite fit with, that made me feel like I was on the fringes of everywhere. Didn't quite fit with any tribe, I suppose you would say, because I didn't want to. I wanted to just be a person in my own right and not have to fit into any particular label. So, you know, that's just a little bit my story. Anybody else got one to share? And then we'll put them all up together, see if we can screenshot everything together. Go on, Laura, do you want to go next?
Oh, it's probably, is it showing the right way?
Yes. That has impacted so many people. Your t-shirt has impacted so many people.
Yeah, this is what I always had on my t-shirt back in the day, whenever we do this piece. For me, it's actually quite a positive word now, because although obviously at the time, this is relating to when I was much younger, I was incredibly quiet, incredibly timid, and just sort of really wanted to block myself away from the rest of the world, I guess. And yeah, it just made me very shy, and gave me this sort of like, you know, easy target for bullying and whatnot at a young age. But for me, because I was that extreme, it helped me in a sense to become the other extreme, which means that nowadays I'm probably far too confident for my own good. I'm very loud and very bolshy when I need to be. So I kind of used that word and turned it into a real positive for myself, because I quite like that I'm obnoxious at sometimes now. So yeah, for me, it's positive.
So that's great that you've turned it around from a negative to a positive. That's
yeah.
You know, you're not.
Sorry. I think probably without ever hearing that, I never would have made the effort to make myself be much more who I feel I'm supposed to be. I feel I'm supposed to be this sort of loudmouth. I feel comfortable within that. And without ever hearing the idea that somebody ever saw me as a nobody, as insignificant, that gave me the sort of strength to be like, whoa, I'm not insignificant at all. Like, I have a lot to say, so I'm going to make sure I'm say it, you know?
Brilliant. So you've owned it. You've taken that word and owned it, and used it to carve yourself out. So there can be some positives from it. Kitty, have you got one for us?
Lazy.
Yeah.
I think for me, there's still that lack of understanding around visible illnesses. People see me on social media, they'll see my pictures of my best days on Instagram, they'll see me doing the odd fire show pre-COVID, and they'll see me and just assume I'm out there doing all these wonderful things. But in real life, I'll have people that are quite close to me, actually, without meaning to, oh, what time do you call this? Or, oh, are you not going out for walks? And then forgetting, actually, I've got quite severe physical illnesses that I can't keep up with people. So the word lazy to me is quite internalized, that that I can't keep up, and that I'm not good enough. And yeah, so I'd had to work on that quite a lot to sort of realize, actually, I can work to my own limitations, and that's okay for me.
Absolutely. And that's, again, education, isn't it? People understanding what the other people have got, things that you might not necessarily see or be aware of. And, you know, if you don't have anything nice to say, as Ben says, don't say anything at all. It brings it back again to that, doesn't it? Sure. Meg, have you got one?
Of a word as well that wasn't necessarily a word that people would consider bullying, but
yeah. Oh, yeah. But for you, hugely, yeah. Yeah, hugely. Meg, have you got one?
Yeah, I've got.
Yeah, similar to mine.
Teacher's pet. It's solely because just through the whole of school I was bullied for maybe being a bit fat or being a bit bigger than other people. And then I was a prefect as well, so that got me a lot of stick, which was where the teacher's pet came from, and people threatened to spit at me and stuff, which I ended up having like my lunch with the head of year for like the last 2 years of my schooling. So
just because of that. Again, it's fear, isn't it? Somebody's achieving, someone's doing things that the other people don't feel that they could do. So I'm just going to pull you right down because it makes me feel uncomfortable. That's a common one, as well as anyone who does well. And same for me with this sort of SWAT thing. There's a judgment. Don't do well. We'll pick on you if you do well. You shouldn't be trying to strive for doing good things. it's bizarre, isn't it, how that can have such an impact?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
definitely.
Thanks, Meg. Ben, have you got one?
Can you see that now? Maybe.
No, move
it's
it across
dark.
to your no. Oh,
Says
yes,
monster.
yes. Monster. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate for a minute on that one?
It was what teachers always called me. It was what I was always called by teachers, doctors, everyone. I was just a monster. Wasn't a human, just bad kid monster. That was what I was always called.
Well, little did they know how wrong they could be, but isn't that just a powerful case of adults not realizing that their really inappropriate use of language can have such an impact on completely unnecessarily? But it's just lucky that Ben is who he is and hasn't let that, he's proven the opposite. And you did your speech a while ago, didn't you? So from monster to lipper. But that, I think for me especially, you're one of the exceptions to the rule. So many kids that I work with have those kind of words thrown at them by adults, and they then live up to that because it becomes a belief that's programmed in. I'm a monster, I'm stupid, I'm naughty, I badly behave, and they fit that role. Of course they do. They're told that that's what they are, and then they become that role. And it's important for us to try and re-educate as many people as we can. And it's we've got a bit of a job ahead of us, but we're doing it. We've done it for a while, and we're making progress. So it's all good. I'm wondering, Ben, whether just before we sign off, can we all put ours towards the camera to film so that you can get the shot that you would like? So obviously, these particular words, if you've seen our show before, we have some pretty harsh, hard words in our show. These are probably would be words that would be more socially acceptable, and it's the stories behind them that make them, that make them relevant to bullying. Some of the words, you can pick whatever word you want out there in the land of the public, anything that's affected you. There's a list on the event that you can have a look at. I put a trigger warning there, so I'm not going to mention any of them now, but any word you like can go on here, anything that's ever been used to bring you down. And there are some really, really strong words on there, so you can pick whatever you like. But I think if we do this, and we'll do this in the Zoom meeting as well, we'll get everyone you don't have to do an explanation like we've done. This is just the context. Unless you'd like to, you can talk it through if you'd like, but all we want to do is at some point we'll get everyone to hold their signs up, or their hands, whatever they've got, and put them at the cameras so we can film everybody's words. And like somebody said once, it's like a wall of hate. When you see it at the show, it's like seeing a wall of hate, and it just makes people think, God, I've used that word before, I've used that word, and it makes people realise. So it is really important to get as many people involved as you can. But if we try, and I can't get myself near enough to the camera, put them all up at the same time. And then we've got that nice film. So, I mean, that is just not nice to see. And if we can get a lot of these on there, then it will be interesting to see all of the words that we can come up with between us. That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, everybody. And it's a very emotional piece when we see this and we do this live. It's really, isn't it? It's really emotional piece, because it works and because it does the job that it's meant to do, and it makes people think. But we have a counterbalance piece that we're going to bring to the mix. So once we've done this next week and we've got as many people involved as we can, we're going to give you all a challenge for the counterbalance piece. We're going to do a second music video, which is going to be about the solution. It's going to completely combat all the things we've done in this piece, and it's going to give people a bit of hope, and it's going to be part of our solution. So that is the second part that we're not going to tell you about yet. So you have to come to the first part to get access to the second part. And then you might be in 2 music videos, and we'll get everybody all famous for doing good stuff. That's the plan anyway. So thank you ever so much. Thank you to our guests. Thank you, Kitty. Thank you, Laura. I'm really excited to see some of the things that we're going to be doing, because I know we've been chatting in the background. Nobody knows yet, but we've got some really, really good stuff planned. If you are at a loose end now and you are not doing anything, you want to hop over to the Zoom. We're going to be jumping on there now to start talking about all things music, dance, performance, some of our concept pieces ready for our stage when we get to our festival in March. So that's what we're going to do now. So we'll sign off for now. Everybody have a lovely weekend.
The hater video.
Yes, you can actually. If you play the hater video as you go, I'm going to jump off and get on Zoom. But if you don't mind, Ben, just to leave us with that, if you play hater, that would be fantastic. And we'll see you all either shortly on Zoom or next week. Bye for now.
Bring me down. Already had my life turned upside down. I write it down, would spiral round and round. But I keep flying, I keep fighting. You won't ever bring me down. I'm good.
and I heard it so often that I started to believe it.
Rammed me into a wall.
Makes you feel like it's never gonna stop.